Ticaret Odası Başkanı Chris Gaunt'un Ülkeler ve Güven konuşmasıyla yapıyoruz. Şimdi söz değerli Chris Gaunt.
I'm delighted to be here as a speaker at the Trust Conference in Istanbul. Enjoying some wonderful weather at this moment in time. I've been self-isolating for the last 4 weeks, getting used to what is the new normal. I think it's a very appropriate subject to be discussing at the conference, trust. I think we will see the consequences of in relation to trust. It's going to be difficult for the world to readjust to the effects of this pandemic, and trust will be fundamental in terms of everybody coming to terms with how we deal with the post environment. I think my subject is to do with countries and trust. I mean, again, the fundamentals of any relationship between countries is based on trust. And trust is a very valuable, it's not a commodity, it's a very valuable element of any relationship. And you know, the Dalai Lama said, you cannot buy trust in a supermarket. It's something that you have to earn. So how do governments go about that? I mean, obviously, openness, transparency is critical to that. It's countries working together, sharing the same values, and also wishing to make a difference in terms of the way we have global sustainable development. I mean, sustainable global development is going to be a major subject for the next generation going forward. And as societies, we have to ensure that we have trust in both our science, our governments, and society in general, who take these issues seriously. As we've gone through, we've seen two sides of societies around the world. We've seen the good side and we've also seen the bad side. Fortunately, I think we've seen more of the good side of global society in this, and a willingness to try and come together to overcome this dreadful that has killed many, many people. And within that, whichever government is governing your country, I mean, I look back at UK and look at how our government have managed and there are always questions about who do you trust? Do you trust the science? Do you trust the medical experts? Do you trust your government policies? And these are all quite critical issues when it comes to overcoming major issues or major concerns that people have when they're dealing with a global virus that we're experiencing still today. So trust is, I say, a fundamental of a global relationship, local relationship, personal relationships, and if we don't have trust, then it's very difficult to progress anything. And it's vitally important that governments come to realise that as we do go forward, then as we have already established globalization, if we start to have a lack of trust, then we're starting to fragment into more nationalist policies within governments. We're looking at more isolation of governments and protectionism of governments. And for me, that's not the way that we should be working. And if we want to overcome some of these issues, it will be trust that actually drives that. I'm very confident that the relationship between our government and Turkey is very positive. We're in a situation today where we are looking to negotiate a free trade agreement with Turkey post-Brexit, which is critical for both countries in terms of the economy and our bilateral trade. Turkey is also looking to negotiate a new customs union which will also enhance their economy in terms of having more access to EU markets. And all those negotiations will only be successful if they are done with an established shared values and trust. And I'm confident that in our negotiations we are working towards achieving that objective of reaching a new free trade agreement with Turkey. It's critical to our economy, critical to the Turkish economy, and we have two willing governments who want to achieve this particular goal. And when you have two willing partners in any negotiation which have trust, then the likelihood is you'll have a successful conclusion to that agreement. And this is what we expect, this is what we're working to, and that will be of mutual benefit to all. It also has an effect on the social environment in both our countries. We have a lot of Turkish students coming to UK, which we want to increase. We want to see more investment from Turkish companies into UK. And one thing that UK does offer is an element of security for investors, as we see countries from all over and investors from all over the world who do invest in UK because they see it as a safe environment to invest their money. And it's governed by trust, it's governed by rule of law, it's governed by transparency. And what we see is more and more companies establishing in UK, including Turkish companies. And again, it all comes back to this element of trust, which everybody looks for. If we, in our marriage, if we don't have trust, we're going to have problems. If we have issues within our workplace, if we don't have trust, there will be problems. And it's been shown by various analysis and statistics that where we have leadership, ethical leadership, and empathy, and the ability to understand what people actually value, then the people that work for you will be more committed, more loyal, and be more productive. It's been shown that where there is an element of lack of trust in organisations, the efficiency, the productivity is less than you would get in a more open, democratic workplace. When I've been involved previously, when I was working with Coca-Cola, we could see in our various funding rounds, talking to investors, potential investors, during our IPO. One of the questions that was being asked at that particular time was, where are we with corporate governance and corporate social responsibility? It was obvious then, and I go back to 2004, 2005, that investors particularly had more confidence and trust in companies that not only had strong corporate governance and also had and practiced corporate social responsibility. They valued those companies far more than companies that didn't have these in place or had them on paper but were not practicing them. So no matter where you look, whether it be in business, whether it be in politics, whether it be in just our daily lives, trust is vitally important. I think another aspect, just going back to, and I've talked about quite a lot, but the situation we have found ourselves in during this terrible is we've had to isolate, we can't go out, we've resorted to having deliveries to home, buying on the internet, all things that many people never did before. But because they've now had to engage with these services that probably they didn't trust before, but now they've experienced them and they've found that they can trust home delivery, they can trust the companies that are providing services delivered to home, and they're actually finding that it's perfectly okay, that it's something that they can trust, it's easier to deal with, it's more convenient, it doesn't take up their time. So as a consequence of routine, I think we will see a change in the future when it comes to retail, where consumers are more inclined to use internet buying than they were previously going to shops. So it will have an effect on the retail sector around the world. I think we're already beginning to see it. And I think there'll be more focus on digital transition, because there will be a major move towards engaging with digital in order to ensure that when we come across major issues like the current pandemic, that we are prepared and we're able to deal with it in a way that is both giving trust to people and also making sure that they're protected. So I'll be looking forward to listening to the other speakers and what they have to say in their respective areas of specialism on how we link all this together, because whatever subject we will talk about, trust will be fundamental to ensuring that we do work together and we do carry on protecting each other and having a society that cares. I'd like to now talk a little bit about the business environment and the future that we'll now have to deal with, again as a result of I mean, what we are seeing now is more people working from home, and working from home very productively. And the way things, or the way companies will look at their working model for the future, I think technology companies particularly are already there pretty much, in that a lot of their staff can work from home very effectively and very productively because they have the technology to support that particular model. But I think for other companies, now they've experienced a relatively smooth process of getting people to work from home, that they will continue to look at that as a new business model, and their workforce will also see benefits in working from home. I think it will change the way they look at their lifestyle, their life-work balance. I think companies will start to review whether they need to be in the major cities, whether they need to pay high rents, when they can actually have their workforce working at other locations in other parts of the country without having any negative effect on the business, and may actually have some added value to the business. So I think companies will now review their business models to see, one, how they can be more efficient and more profitable by having a workforce that is more flexible, that is able to use technology going forward, and still deliver the desired results, and obviously cut costs, which every company looks to have a positive bottom line, and obviously overheads are a large proportion of the costs that they incur. So if you can reduce those overhead costs and still produce the efficiencies, the capabilities and the value that they probably experienced during their workforce working from home, I think they will seriously look at how they can continue that. I think it will have an effect on the future investment in office space around the world. I know London is probably going to have some issues in that there's a lot of office space being constructed in London at the moment, and whether it'll be difficult to fill that office space post. Lots of big multinationals and big UK companies, particularly financial services, I think are also seriously looking at whether they should be head officed in London or they should be in other parts of the country, because technology and digital capability now enables them to spread their costs across the country. They don't have to have it concentrated in one particular place. So I think these are another important areas that I think will change. But again, we come back to this basic element of trust, because you've got to have a business model that has trust embedded in it. So, there are some traditional thinking that, they in some companies around the world, I'm sure still that the traditional thinkers can only trust people when they're in their office. And I think we're proving now that people can trust people to work efficiently and productively when they're not in their office. A very big thank you to the organisers of this conference. I think the subject matter is perfect for the environment that we're in at the moment to discuss this in more detail and just raise the profile of trust. I mean, we seem to have lost that understanding of what trust is all about over recent years. And I think conferences like this will definitely bring that back onto the agenda and hopefully redirect the negative into what we need to do for the future to ensure that the world becomes a world where we can work together and we have to work together, whether it be on climate change, environment, resources, all these areas. And if we're going to have a sustainable planet, trust is going to be the basis of achieving that. Thank you.
Teşekkürler.